Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Tech Bites. We have a special session for you today. We're going all demo, Veeam Hardened Repository. Today I'm with Rick Vanover. Hey, Rick, how's it going?
Hey, Kirsten, I don't know why I said yes to this one. Yes, you're throwing me under the bus here with an all demo session.
That's true, but we love demos. We love showcasing our software, so it should be a good session.
All right. So I've already told the producers that I'm going to be running low on time because I want to get this all in. So I say we just jump right into it. Kirsten, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So let me jump in the lab here. And I want to draw everyone's attention to the Veeam Community Hub. And if you don't know about it, it's community.veeam.com. And at the Community Hub, in fact, if you go to the top page, I still have it as a sticky. Oh no, it's off the sticky. I'm going to put it back. But anyways, we'll just say the Harden repository. You just start typing Harden. You'll be right there. It's the most popular post in the site about it. Now, Kirsten, I know you've used the Harden repo, but have you ever set up the Linux of it?
No, I haven't. What is Linux, Rick? What is Linux?
Okay, that's where we're starting. What is Linux? Okay, that's the other operating system. So I just want to bring everyone's attention to this post here because we did a demo session at Veeam where we did this all demo, but we also released something that I think is really cool. So this installable ISO. So on the page, we have the video that shows how to do it the regular way with Ubuntu, and it also kind of inspires you for other Linuxes. But I want to let everybody know about our new installable ISO and hardening script. So in particular, if you're like, what is Linux? This installable ISO and the hardening can maybe make it really attractive for everyone. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do for the all demo. All right, you ready for me to do it?
Yeah, let's go.
Now, I need to make a disclosure. You know exactly what I'm looking at, Kirsten. This is a virtual machine. Okay, so for show and tell, for demos in this format, I am going to use a virtual machine. But please, while I reboot everyone and load this file, tell everybody the best practice on virtual or physical for the Veeam Hardened repository.
Yeah, so it should be on a physical server. And that's just because it's going to be more secure, pretty much, right, Rick?
Yeah, absolutely. The threat plane of the hypervisor versus the threat plane of the Hardened repository. We're doing this for ransomware. So I have a ISO file mounted here. Now that ISO file that I've mounted, it could be the Ubuntu file, but I have here on that VHR hub post here, you can download this ISO that I'm about to run right now. All right, so I have it mounted. Let's do it. I'm going to do the 3-finger salute. And the first thing you see right away is this option here, install Hardened repository. That's going to delete everything on this system. Okay. Now, the beautiful thing about this ISO, Kirsten, I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to do that. The beautiful thing about this ISO is I don't have to worry about disk partitioning. So this is an area in Linux that I am not really very good at. We want to use the block cloning, the XFS block cloning. In order to do that by hand, it takes some work. Now, I will draw everyone's attention back to this post. The top video up here, I do it by hand, and I talk about how if you have a large amount of storage that you want to be the VHR, the Veeam Hardened repository, you can have that as the mount point. So I do that on the top video. But really, for all things, I want to draw your attention to this markdown file that I made here. And the reason why I started the installation first is to let that install progress for a second. But, we want to make some options like the hardware-enabled kernel. If you're not using my ISO, this ISO does this for you. There's some information about that. What kind of storage? What kind of networking are you going to have? What kind of password are you going to have? I've written all this down. So I encourage everyone to check this out. And we're going to come back to the single use credential because I know you got some questions on that, Kirsten. But yeah, the main thing here is that answer all these questions before you jump into it. So let's see where we're at. Look at this. it jumps right away into the stuff that matters. The ISO asks me the very first question, what's going to be the network setup? Now, in this particular environment, I do have DHCP, okay? Keep in mind, this ISO does some hardening, and actually, I recommend either setting a static that you know will be there for a long time, or just go with DHCP because you could change it through your DHCP server. But DHCP is good enough for me. Just going to make sure that IPv6 is off. Yep. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and, so Kirsten, help me keep score here. 119.135. Do you see that on the IP?
Yeah.
Okay. So
119.135.
Yeah. So when I forget it, you're going to remember, right? Maybe,
Okay.
kind of. Okay. Maybe write that down. All right. So I'll need that later.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first question is what network? Now I am using DHCP. I'm not using a proxy, but I could put it in if I needed to. And then this is important. So let me finish the internet conversation before I do this next thing. If you think about the cybersecurity, October is Cybersecurity Month. This is, I think, the second stream Kirsten and I are doing related to it here. Is connected to the internet a good idea? Probably not. So my thought here, my recommendation here is have internet while you build a VHR, and then on your network side, disable it for this IP, if that makes sense to people, right? You want to have the updates to Ubuntu. Okay, so I mentioned that this is also hardened, and I'm going to get into that here in a second. But you want to get Ubuntu up to date. So I have internet access now, but probably the best practice is to take it away later after the internet updates are done. Does that make sense to you, Kirsten?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. You mentioned Ubuntu a lot. Is there other Linux distributions that this can be deployed on?
Yeah, so good question. I am using Ubuntu 20.04 because that is supported for disastig hardening. But if I look in Veeam Help Center, helpcenter.veeam.com, and I look up the Hardened repository, we can see what it can support in terms of workloads, and then we can find what different Linux options are available. And so I'm going to scroll down here and find it. Let's see.
Is it under requirements?
Look, well, yes, because you know Help Center better than me. So yes, exactly. Let's find it.
Not there, huh?
There it is. It's this one, actually. For Linux backup requirements, it's probably this list right here. It's probably this. These are supported for a VHR in general, but only Ubuntu 20.04 is supported for the hardening. And that's because the hardening doesn't exist yet on 22.04. Okay. Now, I think what I'm going to show you, what I'm going to build here is very attractive for a lot of people, right? So I would recommend if you don't want to have to worry too much about the Linux, but you want it hardened, the 20.04 in the ISO is a good place to start. Yeah, so let me go back over here. So that's a good question. So I am using Ubuntu 20.04 because I want the hardening because I'm using the ISO. Now, this question is really important. It's going to ask me about destroying data. Okay, that's not usually something we do on the show. Okay, but the logic here is that when I do the installation of the VHR on this Linux system, making a VHR, whatever's on here will be destroyed. So the contents of the drives will be wiped out. And I know that going in, so I'm going to continue. All right. So, Kirsten, I think you've seen me talk about the VHR a number of times. What do you remember me telling you about this part of the setup?
To remember.
To remember it. Exactly. No, this is the most important part because we're going to set passwords and stuff.
Yeah. I'll make sure you have a strong password.
Well, yeah, very good. Strong password and that you don't lose it.
Yeah.
this will be the start for the single-use credential.
Yes.
It's kind of hard to talk and come up with a good password at the same time. But let me zoom in here so everybody can see it. So by the way, if you've ever installed Ubuntu straight away, this is the same, right? So the first question was the network. The second question was, do you want to destroy all the data, all the contents of the drives? The third question is, what's going to be the name? And by the way, I'm in a lab. That's why I'm calling this system the victim, because it's going to blow up at the end of the day. I'm going to give a username and a password. And these usernames, this is something you were asking about earlier, Kirsten. What do you think that's for?
The single-use credentials?
Exactly. That's right.
So what's the benefit of using single-use credentials on this repository?
The benefit of using the single-use credential when we configure it in Veeam is really important, because Veeam backup and replication won't store that credential. It's used once as just a one-timer in hockey terms to go and connect and deploy the services. And then from there on out, it doesn't maintain a persistent authentication from the Veeam server to the repo. It's the repo connecting to the Veeam server, right? So it kind of flips it up on its head. So you could take over the Veeam server and you could still have the backup data intact. That's why. And I'll show you that. All right.
So a hacker can't get into the repository.
Not from the Veeam server. That's right. All right. So now that's it. Those are the only options when it comes to the installable ISO to configure Linux. So basically, it did all of the drive partitioning for me. It did other options like what modules to install. Like if anyone's ever installed Linux through the command line, it's like, do you want OpenSSH? Do you want all these other services? This is all sorted out for you. The one thing I'll tell you, for those of you familiar with Linux, you'll see it. It says right here, cancel, update, and reboot, which we want to do the updates, so that's good. Linux is basically deployed at this point. Now it's pulling updates. Okay, so it's updates, not upgrades. So it's still going to be 2204, but the components that we're using for the VHR, the Veeam Hardened Repository, they're going to be up to date as of right now. And actually, you can see it up here. It also says the install is complete, which means that the Ubuntu is deployed. And if I did bounce it now, it would reboot and be okay. So a lot of times, Kirsten, I get the question, should I use the ISO or should I not? The ISO, I say there's two scenarios where you want to use it. Number one is if you just don't want to mess with the options associated with Linux and you want it hardened. So let me take a moment and explain that real quick. So hardened. This is really important because what's really an additional step here with the Veeam Hardened Repository through that ISO is that it is hardened. Okay. And when I say hardened, let me go and show you what I mean by hardened. I mentioned that it's hardened to the DISA-STIG qualification. So that's something that the U.S. Department of Defense has for like a hardened system. Literally, and I'll show you here in a second, all of the system commands, even with the root credential, you can't manipulate what is going on with the VHR. So this is really attractive. And let's see if I can find the actual script here in GitHub, because there's like hundreds of little controls in the hardening script, right? So this script has 544 lines, okay? That does things like, let's see here. It automates this hardening process, right? So this right here for Ubuntu is done. And here's one of the commands right here. Operating system must allow users to directly initiate a session lock for all connection types, and then the command to do it. Operating system must use file integrity tool, right? So there's 544 lines of this for the DISA-STIG hardening process. And it gets more interesting, Kirsten. If you go down here, certain groups to authorize, audit configuration and things like that. And then even to own it, right? I mean, if anybody's been through these hardening things, they're really crazy, thorough, I should say, instead of crazy.
So if you deploy the ISO, this is already built into the ISO, so it makes it a lot easier. But if you were to set this up without using the ISO, you'd have to run that script to harden the repository.
Yeah, you'd have to copy and paste or run it all one by one. Absolutely. Good point. And I feel it's better to have it automated here. And the updates are done. Let me see if I can get here real quick. You'll know that the updates are done because it won't say cancel update and reboot. It'll just say reboot now. So let's do it. Let's reboot. So now basically I've installed, and by the way, you know that you're running it right when you have this, I failed the instructions. It said eject the media. Again, for those of you just joining the stream, I'm doing this as a virtual machine, which is not to be done as production. This is only for the kind of the easiest way to show it to us here on the stream. You don't want to use a virtual machine for the Veeam Hardened Repository. It's easier for me to show you that. And then if you're seeing this type of boot screen, you know that it's been installed. I don't know if you caught it, Kirsten. I'll zoom in here. These are exactly the same type of things we were just looking at. Operating system must generate whatever. These log entries are happening right here, okay? So, and you know that you've deployed the VHR correctly if you kind of get this this screen right here, that this is a community project. Help is available at the VHR Hub, that is a short URL to the page I've been showing everybody in the Community Hub at community.veeam.com, and then search for Hardened Repository. I'll get to the support of the VHR through the hardening process here in a second. But what did I call it? VHR admin, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then you ask me complicated questions when I'm making a password. Good thing I didn't mess it up. Now, by the way, you remember, Kirsten, that it was doing those updates after we, you see how it says this? It says nothing needs to be updated because it just did it. So that's cool.
Nice.
Okay. Now, what do we do?
And what do we do next?
What do we do next? That's right. Where is it? It's in this video. So by the way, if you're watching this stream, I'm going to do it, but also I have a YouTube video down here to explain that. But there are two small steps that we need to do. So let me go over here from Help Center. Yeah, here we go. All right. Now, the first thing I want to do, let me see if I can cheat a little bit and make it so I can see. There we go. All right. Adjust my levels here a little bit. All right. So, Kirsten, if I'm going to do this ISO, one of the first things that people have asked me is, how does it assign the drives? How does it build them up, right? So I'm going to go to the root, and I'm going to pwd, I'm going to print my working directory, and then I'm going to do a ls. Let me do an ls -l. I'm not a super Linux guy, everyone, so apologize. But what I do want to draw everyone's attention to is that the default installation will put the big geometry, the drives assignment that is to be the VHR, in this mount path. So if I go into mount, do a ls here, -l, you'll see that I have one folder called backup 1. Now, if I had multiple very large drives, which would be the VHR storage, I would have backup 1, backup 2, etc. But I only have one. And I think it's 24 terabytes. Okay. So now I want to draw everyone's attention to these two commands right here. The change ownership and the change mode runs, which are in the Help Center. Okay. And again, I have this in the VHR admin video, the VHR hub video, but we got to just do these two quick commands, changing ownership to that account we made, and then changing the run mode. So let's go over and do that real quick. So change ownership -R to VHR admin for mount backup singular 1. See if it worked. Oh, it's VHR-admin. Okay. And then I'm going to change mode to 700 for mount backup 1. Okay. So zoom in here so everybody can see that when it worked. These two commands, which are the same thing that were in Help Center, these basically change the ownership to the VHR admin account and change that, allow access to the directory only owner in the root account, right? So these are pretty clearly set up, super well documented. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of the things above were already done by the ISO. If you were installing by hand, you'd have to do all of these. But if you're using this ISO, you just need those two. So now, Kirsten, the fun part begins. What are we going to do now?
We're going to add it to the Veeam backup server.
That's right. All right. So in order to do that, let me first make sure we're pinging. We are. That's good. It was 11. Is that the address I told you to remember?
119.135.
Yep. Cool. Now, I'm in a lab, so I'm not going to set up DNS, but that might be a good time, especially because I'm using DHCP. For those of y'all, you might want to use DNS entries at this time. So let's put this in. I've already forgot it, Kirsten. .136.5. Okay.
135.
All right, cool. All demo VHR is the name of this one. And what do I do here? Trick question.
This is where you put in your single use credentials, Rick.
Exactly. All right.
And this is only going to be used once.
Yes. And so that's a very important part. This right here will not be retained, right? Because it is a single use credential when I added that down there.
So if someone, may forget this part, they're maybe they forget to put the single use credentials and they use a regular Linux credential, what will happen? Are they going to get a warning, or is it just going to, still connect, or?
It would still work as a regular Linux distro. It just wouldn't be hardened.
Okay.
So that's a very good question. Because we can put backups on Linux file systems.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't use a single use credential, it won't come into the next step as a hardened repo.
Okay.
So now what's happening is we are pushing the services out. Okay. So when I say pushing the services, like the transport service, the installer service, pushing it out right there, it's installing the transport service. So the thought here is that the VHR has been born from a Linux perspective. Now the Veeam services are being installed. And then we'll go to the next step of adding a repo. And then we can start putting backups on it and all that other good stuff.
So before you add it as a repository, you have to add it as a managed Linux server. Yeah.
Now, when I talk to some of the product management people, they're like, why didn't you do it the other way? I like doing it this way so that they understand the Linux part. Mm-hmm. But I could just add a repo, and then in there is add a Linux server, which will add this.
Okay, so you don't have to go to this separate screen. You could do it all through the backup repository wizard if you'd like. Because it would automatically open this wizard.
Yes, with a sneeze half on mute. Yes, exactly. So, hey, friends, live is live. Okay, so the Linux server was added successfully. There it is. And if you go over to repositories, now we can go, and if we do this add backup repository, just in the open space here, you can do that. And, okay, piece of trivia. Kirsten, not Kristen, sorry about that. I've worked with you for over 9 years. I am very sorry I messed that up. Which one of these, Kirsten, do you think I should select?
I would say network attached storage.
How about guessing again?
Direct attached storage.
Yes, there you go. So
I do get that. I do mix those two up sometimes. That's okay. I would admit that.
You started the show saying, what is Linux? So I'm going to give you a pass here. So this option here, when we built this option, it kind of prescribes the next steps. And one of the things we did in V12 based off of V11 is really streamline the Linux hardened repository. So let's do that. I'll demo VHR via the ISO. Okay. Let me know I typed that wrong. All right. So then it's going to ask me, where's my server? Okay. Now, first, and here's where I could just go add new. And if I did the add new, it would be that exact same Linux set of steps.
Okay.
And it would just then give me the resultant set here, but we already did it. So I'm going to go ahead and select the all demo one that we just made. And let's populate it just so I can explain something here. I wrote it up in that Community Hub post, but we'll take all of the drive storage. And like I said, all of the geometry allocations are kind of done for you. Right here, mount backup 1 is about 24 terabytes, right? So that's where the Veeam backups are going to go. And then the rest of this has all been allocated for me. I don't have to worry about it. I think we have a hard requirement of 100 gig or more for the partitioning, but it's really just nice to know I don't have to worry about it. And we put that in mount backup 1. So let's see what we find here. Okay. Yep. Now, okay. So here's a suggestion for everyone on the stream for a potential best practice. I like to make a folder in here. And let me explain. This is not required, but basically I just went and added a folder, which is the server name of my Veeam backup and replication server. And let me explain why. If I'm dealing with a complete disaster and I've lost my Veeam backup server, I know that the data on here came from this server. So if I'm trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, I know that that was the server that these backups were written on, especially if you think about multiple Veeam backup and replication servers, multiple VHRs in the mix. This is really important. Any questions on that, Kirsten?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, you said multiple backup servers, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Can they use the same hardened repository to store their backups if they have multiple backup servers? So adding the same server into the backup server as a hardened repository.
I don't recommend doing a many-to-one, meaning many Veeam backup and replication servers. So you could, maybe have taken my thing here and made a folder for every Veeam BNR server that is in your mix. I don't like that idea. It might work. It's probably not supported. It's definitely not a good idea. So no for those 3 reasons.
Okay.
One thing I want to, but it's a fair question, Kirsten, because maybe people are like, I don't want to add, so many different bits and bobs to what I'm doing.
They don't want to deploy the ISO 3 or 4 times. Maybe they only want to do it once.
But it's not hard. This is easy.
It makes it honestly, the ISO seems like it makes everything a lot smoother and easier. So
it is. And that's why we're doing it here, to show it to you, show it to everyone. All right. Now, one of the most important parts are right here. Let's we'll pick a new color, Kirsten. What color do you want?
Green.
Great. And right here. Okay. So in the blue box, there is this notion of use fast cloning on XFS volumes, right? So this is a really big positive thing for the VHR. This is a storage efficiency. It's not deduplication, but it prevents duplication. Dave Russell and I call it no dupe, but it's not dedupe. What this is when we're doing synthetic fools, the disk manipulations where Veeam services are reading data from a Veeam backup file and then writing it onto that same volume, it'll just do a link. It'll do a clone. So it saves time, it saves capacity, and it'll save IOPS. So that's great. And then the one on the bottom is make backups immutable for a specified number of days. Now, Kirsten, kind of a trick question. Do you know what's different in this green box on 12 and newer versus V11. Do you know the big difference here on this area here in the green box? The big thing was we used to have a checkbox to say, yes, make the backups immutable. There's a little checkbox
so
right
it's
here.
automatically, you don't have the option to not have them immutable.
Yeah, you cannot have them mutable. They can only be immutable.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool.
That
right?
makes sense.
Yeah. So again, we've built the wizard around the VHR. So then I'll ask you, Kirsten, I know you like to do a lot in Veeam 1 for monitoring. And by the way, Veeam 1 will monitor the VHR. Is 7 days a good day enough duration for immutability? I mean, we can't go lower, by the way. Nothing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think this is going to depend on your business requirements, right? It's whatever your organization has set up to have those backups be immutable for. What also is great about Veeam 1, if that period of time changes on your backup repository, Veeam 1 is going to send you an alert saying, hey, the immutability period has changed. And that could tell you maybe someone went in there, changed it, or maybe it was done intentionally. But either way, you're going to get that visibility into your backup infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm going to go with 14. I think 7 is a great starting minimum. And especially if you maybe have another copy off site, like in AWS or Wasabi or Azure or something like that. But let's go ahead and make it 14. All right, so it's double checking on that VHR. Is fast clone requirements going to work, and it's going to configure the database. So let's do it. Oh, it found that the services are already there. It's a happy camper. So let's do it.
Now it's going through the final steps here.
Mm-hmm.
Almost game time.
Is it? Let's see. There's one more important thing we got to do.
What? Put a backup on it?
No, we actually, the very, very last thing we have to do. So it's done. It's ready. It is there. Okay. The next thing we have to do, Kirsten, is we have to reboot it. Sorry, I'm bad labbing. Got stuff up open everywhere. I have to reboot it one more time to finalize those hardenings. Okay.
Okay.
So one more reboot. Sudo reboot. Okay. So I was going to do a hardened repository boot up one more time here. Now watch this. Do you like watching me fumble through demos?
I like watching everybody fumble through demos.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you, Kirsten, I'm going to ask you to think of something hard or something dangerous to do, like change the IP address or delete the drive or something like that. I'm going to think of something for you to do here for me to see if the hardening actually works. If you know what I mean.
Why don't you try to delete the folder that you created? Would that?
Well, I should probably put something in it, first of all.
Okay.
So
that one's a little bit more, that requires a little bit more steps, right?
Yeah.
Why don't you try to delete the drive then?
Okay. So let me go back into the system, pinging back. I should have a little break here after that reboot. Yep. Okay, so still pinging it. All right, so let me make sure it came back up happy. It's just rebooting, but like I said, it's finalizing the hardening here.
So since this is still going here, can you assign other roles on this repository? Like, for example, like a proxy role or anything like that?
Well, that's good that you said that here. So
and also, if it is possible, would you recommend doing something like that?
I will tell you this, the Linux hardened repository that we had with the ISO, I do not recommend putting the proxy role on it with the ISO because the hardening will break that. So, short answer, no. But if you're not doing the ISO, you can. So that makes sense. You can do it if you're not using the ISO.
So there are different like transport modes too when you think about moving the data. Right. So what transport mode should they make sure they're using? Network mode, hot direct mode, hot add?
Well, I would just do automatic. Okay. That's my recommendation. And if I look here, repository, immutability, somewhere in the docs here, it talks about proxy. Let me just see. Proxy.
Right there. For security reasons, you cannot assign other roles to the Harden repository for the VMware backup proxy working in the network mode.
Yes, you caught it. It's highlighted. Thank you for that. Yes, right here. So there's a whole section on that. Thanks.
Okay.
I tell you, friends, she knows how to navigate Help Center way better than I do.
The more you know, right? The more you know.
All right. What's going on here? Is it working? I think it's working. Let's see. Because it's supposed to be, let me log in, but it's not. So that's interesting. I think it did work, though. Do I have it open twice? Yes, I do. Let's close that. Let me give this a second here. I may have messed something up, when we do our streams. It wouldn't surprise me if I did. Let me reboot this again and not touch anything. So sorry about that. Let's give this a second here. Hardened repo, that's what you want to see. That's good. Aha, this is what I want to see. All right, so I did it my last reboot. Let's go back into B&R and let's just do a sample job. Let's do HyperV because HyperV.
I didn't even know we still had HyperV in the lab.
Ouch, Kirsten! Ouch! I've worked really hard on that.
I love me some HyperV. Those machines are always pretty. The machines you have on there are pretty easy to back up.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so let's put it in the all demo. I'm going to make the retention match this and go 14, 14. Now, friends, at this point, the VHR, the job, all of that is the same as normal. So I'm not going to go through all the different, small details associated with, retention, application-aware image processing, etc. So let's get this started here. And
yeah, it looks like you have 2 jobs running right now.
Whoopsie doodle. Yeah, looks like I do. Well, I don't know. Maybe I double clicked crazy.
Yeah, I see that the other one is going to the double play immutability.
Yeah.
So what's that?
Well, that's got to be that's a different configuration, but it's probably going also to an object storage offsite that's also immutable.
Yeah, so for ultra resilience.
Ultra resiliency. All right. So we're moving data. Data's going in. Okay. You can see it right there. We've already started. So we've got the HyperV backup underway. So now let's go see if I can break it. So I'm going to log in here. And there's only one credential. This is the single-use credential, but the Veeam server isn't tracking it anymore. So if I go into mount backup 1, and then into that server name, okay, and I'm going to, and then I go into the job name, then I'll give everybody a good view here. So I see that I have this is the metadata file, right? So these are coming in. Cool. And then the first backup file is coming in, the VBK. Then one of the other things I can do, list attributes, right? Let's see here. Oh, right there. You can see it right there. It's already, the VBK file is marked as immutable, which is good. And because it's done, by the way, but or it's not. Is it done? Let's see. Stopped in success. So the backup file is written. Okay. I purposely chose that HyperV file because it's pretty short. Let's take a look now. All right. So, interesting. The VBK file is immutable. The metadata file is not, because that does change as increments happen. That doesn't matter. If you had to lose a metadata file, that's no big deal. All right. So you said you wanted me to destroy the file.
Yeah.
All right. So let me see if I can do. It would be rm star.vbk. Okay. Operation not permitted. Let me try it as sudo. All right, let me spell sudo right. Give me the password. All right. So this is different. The user is not allowed to execute remove. So even with the only password, first of all, it's marked as immutable. So I actually get a different error, but like I can't even do that. The other example I like to do, Kirsten, is changing the IP, like with DHCP.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, DHCP, Ubuntu. This is how much Linux I know. Okay, renew IP address. I'm not a Linux expert, friends, right? But let's see if we can tell Linux to this one, sudo dh client r. So I do remember dh client r is the command, right? So again, I'm not a Linux expert, but let's try that. Sudo dh client r. What do you think? Renew IP? Think it's going to work?
No.
No? Hardening? I got root. Let's sudo it, baby. 1, 2, 3. That's right. I still can't. I still cannot. The user is not allowed to execute those types of things. So again, the hardening is real. So we've written a backup. We put it in Veeam backup and replication. So Kirsten, as we round out this demo, I mean, I think this is pretty cool when you think about it. In B&R, we've got it. Again, everyone, this all starts at the Community Hub. Look for this session, the all demo installable ISO for the VHR. I don't know, man. I mean, did I pass or did I fail my test that you gave me here?
I think that you passed.
You think?
And yeah, the installable ISO makes it a lot easier to install, especially like you mentioned several times within our session today. You know, you're not a Linux expert, and not everybody is. And resources like this that can be found in the community are going to really help make sure that, you know, it's set up properly and you can start using it in your environment.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think it's important to know that, you know, this is October. This is Cybersecurity Resiliency Month. And next week, we don't have any streams or any, both Tuesday's Industry Insights and the targeted Thursday Tech Bytes stream, because, Kirsten, what's coming on next week? Something that we've been working on all month.
The Veeam Resiliency Summit?
That's right. Could it be?
I said that surprisingly because not only are we working on the Veeam Resiliency Summit, I was thinking about the Veeam 100 Summit because, like, I'm pretty pumped up for that too. I mean, we have a lot of fun things
after
planned.
that.
I can't even think that far. We have a lot of fun things planned for this month. It's hard to keep up with it all.
That's a fair shout. And, you know, the Veeam Resiliency Summit right at the top of Veeam.com is a great way to get the latest on some of the cybersecurity updates. And we're going to do a lot of previews of 12.1.
What?
Great stuff. Yeah.
12.1.
That's right. And everything we showed today is GA. We should highlight that. But the Veeam Resiliency Summit will give a sneak peek to what's coming next in the Veeam data platform. So, hey, Kirsten, thanks for keeping me honest on these demos here today.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on the stream.
All right. Well, everyone, big thanks for our producer in Ohio, social media team in Texas, bringing this content to you. On behalf of the Veeam product and marketing teams, thanks for watching. That concludes our stream.